Hello, my name is Pierre. I'm an electrical engineer working for Specialized Solar Systems, and the subject of my lecture this morning is lightning and lightning protection. It's always very important before you look at something like this to understand the basics, because if you understand the basics, then the rest will come naturally. So when we look at lightning, the first question we need to ask, what is lightning and where does lightning come from? Basically, you got cloud, and you got the earth below it, and you got a distance there, and let's say that distance is 500 meters. So what will happen, depending on the weather conditions, there will be static buildup in this cloud, and it will have a potential, and that potential will rise quite rapidly relative to the earth, which we can just call it as earth. And earth is a symbol we use in diagrams for electrical earth. So this potential will build up, and that will be thousands of volts. And eventually that gap becomes too small for the voltage difference, and you'll have a flash going to earth. Because it's like having a sphere, and you probably see it where you got some earth below it, and that sphere is an aluminium sphere, and they set it at a very high voltage, and eventually you'll see flashes and tracking taking place between the sphere and the earth conductor below it. So that's exactly what will happen, and that's where the lightning comes from. Now when you look at lightning, you obviously look at the voltage of that lightning, but you also have current flowing as a result of that. And why is it important for people in the solar industry to understand lightning? The reason is that this could be very harmful to your equipment, and you need to look after it to make sure it doesn't damage the equipment. Now there's essentially two ways that you can protect your equipment against lightning. The one way is to stop the lightning reaching your equipment, and the other way, or a combination of it, is to put a device which is called a surge arrestor in your equipment to absorb that surge and to stop the voltage of the equipment rising too much and causing damage, particularly to the electronic equipment, because the electronic equipment is very sensitive. If the equipment is rated for, let's say, 15 volts, and you impose 100 volts to it, you will damage that equipment. So the way that you can look at it is, let's say you've got that's the earth, and you've got a building like that, and you now got PV panels sitting on that roof, and maybe also your inverter and your DC junction boxes. So lighting will always go to the nearest point to earth. So if this building is taller than this building here, the lighting will strike there. There might be side strikes that could go there or could go there, but the main strike will be to the highest building, because that building invariably has some form of earth that goes down there, whether it's the reinforcing in the steel or steelwork inside the structure or some other method. That lighting will hit the tallest building. That's why, just as a little joke, when there's lighting, just make sure you're shorter than the guy next to you. Then you should be okay. Now, the way that you can protect those panels and equipment is to either create some sort of barrier around that equipment, some sort of barrier there, so that when the lightning strikes, it will strike that equipment, and this barrier or netting or whatever, there's a down conductor, and it's connected through spikes or a trench earth to earth. So now you create a metal shroud around your equipment, or a net around your equipment, that will stop the lightning from reaching your equipment. And that is quite expensive to put that up. Now the interesting thing is that they call it a rolling sphere. If you, for example, got a building like that and something like that, and you want to protect it, they call it a sphere because it's an imaginary ball that you run. So if you run that ball there, it will go 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 there. So if you can create, now you can see there's no protection because it will run along the perimeter of the building. But if you create an obstacle here, look what happens with the ball now. The ball will now run there, and it will 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 run there. So this zone here is protected. If you, for example, got that same building and you put a spike there, then you're not covered because the ball will be like that, and the next ball will be like there, and the next ball will be like that. So the protection zone is then there, which is, so if your panel sits there, then you're okay. But if you had two of those masks, one there and there, and you string a wire across, look how much better it is now, okay? Or even if you didn't have that wire, your ball will be there now, your next ball will go there and there, there. So that's I call a rolling sphere, so that you can see what the protection zone is. So quite often if you've got a mask and you've got pieces of electronic equipment sitting over here and you put a spike there, that protection zone is like nearly like a 40-degree cone there. So that will protect your equipment. So your protection zone will be there. And obviously the higher you make that spike, the bigger you make that tent over it like that. So when you decide on that spike length, you can just draw a picture of it, and that's roughly about 45 degrees. And you can see what your protection is. So that is how you create external protection. But as I said before, it's expensive because you have to create this mesh or spikes and wires, and you have to create a down conductor, etc. So the other way is to protect the equipment inside the equipment, and that's where you use a surge arrestor. Now the surge arrestor is a little device. If you draw your circuit, if that's your circuit here, and you've got your DC junction box, for example, and you've got fuses sitting here for your positive and your negative. So there's your positive wire coming from your panels, and that's the negative wire. And then you would have a circuit going out. So you'll have multiples of these, and you'll have circuits going out. Now, what you can do is then put a surge device there, over there. And you'll have one, I'm just drawing as if though it's one circuit, but you'll have a surge arrestor down to earth for positive, and that's the surge arrestor over here. Diagrammatically it's drawn like this. And that surge arrestor will then, as soon as that potential rise above a certain level, let's say that voltage is arguably, say, 200 volts. So you will then make that surge arrestor slightly above that voltage. Let's say it's 230 volts. And that surge arrestor will break through as soon as the potential of that connection rises above 230. This will become a short circuit, and it will be like a sponge. It will absorb that surge, but it can't absorb the surge for too long, because then it will blow up. And so that surge arrestor is able to handle a certain current for a certain period. So if the surge doesn't go away, it will destroy itself. And the one thing to remember about that surge arrestor, it's a chemical device. It's what they call a MOSFET device. So there's chemicals inside, and that device must change from a high resistance to a very low resistance to absorb it. And it's got to recover back to the high resistance. So every time, it's like you squeezing a tennis ball. So every time it absorbs a surge, it goes like that, but then it goes back again. Absorbs, and then come back again. But it can only do so many times, that function. And if you don't stop it from experiencing the same problem too many times, it will basically run what we call in thermal runaway. When it goes into thermal runaway, this device becomes like a permanent short, and it keeps on carrying that current to earth. So what we often do is we put a fuse there, roughly 150 or 120 amp fuse, in series with that arrestor. so that that current, the thermal runaway current, is not high enough to blow that device up. It's limited by that resistance. Some arrestors has got that resistor built into it, so when you purchase a resistor, a lightning arrestor, make sure it's got a built-in fuse, or alternatively you have to install an external fuse. The lightning arrestors comes in different classes, so you have to look at the different class and decide basically on the application what type you're going to use for your installation. One thing that I've found quite often that happens is that they put the fuses too close to the lighting arrestor too close to the fuses or circuit breaker in the DC combiner or junction box. And what happens is when this device destroys itself, it basically blows a lot of carbon out into the surrounding area. And bear in mind that these strings can go up to 800 volt or whatever. So the voltage here is quite high. And when you deposit all this carbon and whatever on this thing blows up as well. So we've had quite a number of DC junction boxes blowing up and start burning because of this device blowing up. So my philosophy is always that you must put at least 20 to 30 millimeter spacing between this and any other device to stop this flowing. The other thing that's quite important is the value of the earth. Now, when you look at lightning, lightning is what they call a standing wave. So if you draw a diagram of the wave shape of the lightning, it looks something like this. It's got a standing wave. It rises very sharply, and then it decays to zero again. Now that sharp rise basically implies a very high frequency, because frequency, if you remember, if you look at AC, it does that. And the number of cycles is called a frequency, and with AC that's 50 Hertz. Now if you look at the shape of that wave, it's much, much more steep than this wave here. So the system interprets this as a high frequency. So when you look at earthing lightning, you must always be very careful, because with normal DC, only the resistance plays a role, but now you've got a frequency device or frequency power source, and it's got a high frequency. So when you got a common mistake people make is they got a pole and they bring the earth conductor down and they wound it around the pole like this. And they think they're very clever because now they can get very good contact with earth. But by making it like that in circles, you actually create what we call inductance. It's called XL, and XL is equal to 2 pi FL, okay? So that's your inductive resistance, which is the resistance against the flow of that lightning current, and that's equal to 2 pi FL, and F is the frequency, and L is the inductance of that coil. So the higher the F is, the higher the X is. So under no circumstances when you do a lightning earth must you try and make coils or funny bends or stuff like that. The conductor must flow like water. You know, it must flow a natural path to earth. And the resistance compared with AC you would normally look at between 1 and 5 ohms. But with lightning, because of the much higher current and voltage, you can probably get away with like 10 ohms or maybe even higher, which would be adequate enough to release that energy to Earth. So that is the end of my lecture today. Next time we will go into more complicated issues regarding lightning protection.